Medieval India, Chapter number 6, The Delhi Sultanate. The Mameluke Sultans. Some of the factors which enabled the Turks to extend their conquest from Punjab and Multan into Ganga Valley and even to overrun Bihar and parts of Bengal have been mentioned in the previous chapter. For almost 100 years after that, the Delhi Sultanate, as the state ruled over by these invaders was hard pressed to maintain itself in the face of foreign invasions. Internal conflicts among the Turkish leaders and the attempts of the dispossessed and subordinate Rajput rulers and chiefs to regain their independence and, if possible, to oust the Turks. The Turkish rulers were successful in overcoming these difficulties and by the end of the century were in a position to extend their rule over Malwa and Gujarat and to penetrate into the Deccan and South India. The effects of the establishment of the Turkish rule in North India thus began to be felt within 100 years all over India and resulted in far reaching changes in society, administration, and cultural life. Struggle for establishment of a strong monarchy. Muizzuddin Muhammad Ghori was succeeded 1206 by Qutbuddin Aybak, a Turkish slave who played an important part in the expansion of the Turkish Sultanate in India. After the Battle of Tarain, another slave of Muizzuddin, Yildiz, succeeded at Ghazni. As the ruler of Ghazni, Yildiz claimed to rule over Delhi as well. This, however, was not accepted by Aybak, and from this time the Delhi Sultanate severed its links with Ghazni. This was fortunate since it helped to prevent India being drawn into Central Asian politics. It also enabled the Delhi Sultanate to develop its own independent lines without depending on countries outside India. Iltutmish from 1210 to 1236. In 1210, Aybak died of injuries received in a fall from his horse while playing Chaugan polo. He was succeeded by Iltutmish, who was the son-in-law of Aybak. But before he could do so, he had to fight and defeat the son of Aybak. Thus, the principle of heredity of son succeeding his father was checked at the outset. Iltutmish must be regarded as the real consolidator of the Turkish conquest in North India. At the time of his accession, Ali Mardan Khan had declared himself the king of Bengal and Bihar, while Kubacha, a fellow slave of Aybak, had declared himself an independent ruler of Multan and seized Lahore and parts of Punjab. At first, even some of the fellow officers of Iltutmish near Delhi were reluctant to accept his authority. The Rajputs took advantage of the situation to assert their independence. Thus, Kalinjar, Gwalior, and the entire eastern Rajasthan, including Ajmer and Bayana, threw off the Turkish yoke. During the early years of his reign, Iltutmish's attention was concentrated on the northwest. A new danger to his position arose with the conquest of Ghazni by Khwarizm Shah. The Khwarizmi Empire was most powerful state in Central Asia at this time. In the eastern frontier extended up to the Indus. In order to avoid this danger, Iltutmish marched to Lahore and occupied it. In 1220, the Khwarizmi Empire was destroyed by the Mongols, who founded one of the strongest empires in history, which at its height extended from China to the shores of the Mediterranean Sea and from the Caspian Sea to the rivers of Jaxrites. The danger is posed to India and its effects on the Delhi Sultanate will be discussed in the subsequent section. While the Mongols were busy elsewhere, Iltutmish also ousted Kubacha from Multan and Ooch. The frontiers of Delhi Sultanate thus reached up to the Indus once again. Secure in the west, Iltutmish was able to turn his attention elsewhere. In Bengal and Bihar, a person called Evaz, who had taken the title of Sultan Ghiasuddin, had assumed independence. He was a generous and able ruler and built many public works. While he made raids on the territory of his neighbors, the Sena rulers of East Bengal and the Hindu rulers of Odisha and Kamrup, Assam, continued to sway. In 1226 and 27, Ivaz was defeated and killed in a battle with Iltutmish's son near Lakhnauti. Bengal and Bihar passed under the suzerainty of Delhi once again, but they were difficult to charge and repeatedly challenged the authority of Delhi. At about the same time, Iltutmish took steps to recover Gwalior and Bayana. Ajmer and Nagaur remained under his control. He sent expeditions against Ranthambore and Jalore to reassert his suzerainty. He also attacked Nagada, the capital of Mewar, about 22 kilometers from Udaipur, but had to beat a retreat at the arrival of the Gujarat armies, which had come to aid Rana. As a revenge, Iltutmish dispatched an expedition against the Chalukyas of Gujarat, but it was repulsed with losses. Razia 1236 to 39. During his last years, Iltutmish was worried over the problem of succession. He considered none of his surviving sons to be worthy of the throne. After anxious consideration, he finally decided to nominate his daughter Razia to the throne and induced the nobles and the theologians ulama to agree to the nomination. Although women had ruled as queen both in ancient Iran and Egypt and had acted as regents during the minority rule of princes, the nomination of a woman in preference to sons was a novel step. In order to assert her claim, Razia had to contend against her brothers as well as against powerful Turkish nobles and could rule only for 3 years. Though brief, her rule had a number of interesting features. It marked the beginning of a struggle for power between monarchy and the Turkish chiefs, sometimes called the Forty, or the Chahalgani. Iltutmish had shown great deference to these Turkish chiefs. After his death, these chiefs, drunk with power and arrogance, wanted to install a puppet whom they could control. They soon discovered that though a woman, Razia was not prepared to play their game. She discarded the female apparel and started holding court with her face unveiled. She even hunted and led the army in war. The Wazir, Nizamul Mulk Junaidi, who had opposed her elevation to the throne and backed and supported a rebellion of nobles against her, was defeated and forced to flee. She sent an expedition against Ranthambore to control the Rajputs and successfully established law and order in the length and breadth of her kingdom. But her attempt to create a party of nobles loyal to her and to raise non-Turks to high office led to opposition. The Turkish nobles accused her of violating feminine modesty and being too friendly to an Abyssinian noble, Yaqut Khan. Rebellions broke out at the Lahore and Sirhind. She personally led an expedition against Lahore and compelled the governor to submit. On the way to Sirhind, an internal rebellion broke out in which Yaqut Khan was killed and Razia imprisoned at Tabarhinda Bhatinda. However, Razia won over her captor Altunia and after marrying him made a renewed attempt on Delhi. Razia fought valiantly but was defeated and killed in flight by bandits. Thank you everyone for tuning in. In the next part, we'll start with era of Balban on page number 49. Thank you and all the best for exams. Do share and subscribe the channel for more videos like this. Thank you everyone.